Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for coming. And we've got a Zoom Q&A session that we're doing today with Karine and myself. And we're going to spend the time answering questions about values. This is really the place for you to come, whether you're taking a course maybe, and you want to come and talk to us directly and ask your questions, or you just have general questions about values. Maybe you heard from the podcast or somewhere else and you want to dive deeper. This is a good place to do that. We also cover a topic each month, and today's topic is how to use values to find your purpose. Super relevant for Karine and I, and so we assume that there are some other people out there who would find it relevant too. First, I just want to say that I am in BC and I'm specifically on Treaty 8 territory. Traditional and contemporary territory of the Ktunaxa people, the Syilx, and the Sinixt people on land that's also home to Métis and other Indigenous peoples. Karine, do you want to say a couple things about where you are today?
Yeah, I'm dialing in from Calgary, Alberta, or McKinstis, which is located on the ancestral lands of the people of Treaty 7, which includes the Blackfoot Confederacy, which is the Siksika, Piikani, and Kainai First Nations. Treaty 7 also includes the Tsuut'ina First Nation, Stoney Nakoda, that is the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wesley First Nations. And this is the traditional land also used by the Métis people, which includes the Métis Region 3 of Southern Alberta and the Métis settlements of Alberta. And mostly, we acknowledge that traditional Indigenous systems and worldviews are the originators of values-based life. And we're here today in some way rediscovering what traditional Indigenous teachers and elders have known for eons. And that knowledge we know was stripped away from them through violent colonization and assimilation practices. And their wisdom endures to this day, and it will into the future. And VBL, or values-based living, we contribute as much as we can to the collective healing and reconciliation of the Indigenous peoples of the land we call Canada.
Okay, thank you, Karine. I'll also just say as a side note, we host monthly virtual circles. And we donate a large portion of our proceeds from that offering to an organization called Bear Clan Patrol, specifically the one in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, which is a group that supports personal security in the inner city in a non-threatening, non-violent, and supportive ways is how they mention it. And Karine lives there, so she gets to see firsthand the really good work that they do. So with that, maybe we'll just say a couple of things about ourselves, Karine, and then we'll go into, I definitely want to leave time for questions, general values questions, and then we'll nerd out about the topic that we picked today. So I'll say for myself, my name is Ali Ansel, and Karine and I built this cool thing, Values-Based Living, in 2019. And so I'm a mediator. I have been since 2015 or 16 or something like that. And so the majority of my work is mediating people through external conflict. But the part that Karine and I get, I think, the most satisfaction from is helping people work on their inner conflict, because that just helps everything, including with stuff that's going on externally. And so that is my little passion, and I try to sneak that in to the mediations and external conflict stuff that I do too. Karine, what do you want to say about you?
I would just add Karine. I'm Karine Lawrence, and I've been working on various iterations of values-based living since 2007. And I feel very strongly and passionately that this can work for everyone. And I know because I have tested on myself in my life and shared it with other people and seen the ways that it can absolutely change and create relationships and deepen relationships with themselves and with other people. So I know it, I live it, and I work it, I teach it.
Yeah, represent. We've seen that. We've seen that in action. One of our favorite things to do is pluck our own problems out and then find a way
Right?
to like help people universally solve them.
Mhm.
And so I'm just seeing we have someone else who's come from the lobby
That's fantastic.
and joined us and is connecting to audio. Perfect. So yeah, so to the folks who just joined, welcome. We were just going over a little bit of housekeeping pieces. So if you're listening in, you're very welcome to turn on your camera if you want or not. It's up to you. We are recording because we make this available for people who couldn't be here live. So let that inform your like contributions today. But the purpose of this session is to hear questions from people of values questions they have.
Oh, Allie, I think you froze there. Oh, you're back.
The nitty gritty. Oh,
You just froze for 1 second there.
oh, okay. Thank you.
So just to summarize, free forum to ask questions about values. And Allie and I are also going to talk about what is using values to discover life purpose.
Exactly. So it's a juicy topic and we could spend more time than we have on it. We have an hour, by the way. So before we dive into that, does anybody have any questions they want to ask about values in general? By the way, you can also ask a question about conflict in general, and it will relate to values. It always does. You can ask in the chat box, or you can just unmute and ask the question. Does anybody have anything they want to throw out there that we can talk about for a couple minutes?
I was wondering if you can tie this, the purpose to your motivation, because I don't think the two necessarily always come hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
You betcha. That is a big part of values-based living perspective on finding purpose, is being able to understand how values and our motivation systems are directly connected to how do we find our life purpose. Yeah, that is skipping ahead in the curriculum as usual, Gavin.
Eager beaver, love it. And I made a note
gotcha.
too. We'll make sure to use that word. Like purpose and motivation are definitely linked. So let's weave that in for sure.
Yeah. Do you want to just put in the chat, Allie, just invite people to ask questions as we go, and just say this is a space for asking questions, and we're going to be talking about life purpose and values. Welcome, Miguel. Welcome, Leah. Thanks for joining. We're just finishing up some housekeeping pieces and a quick reminder that this is being recorded. And we're about to start talking about how values and purpose are intrinsically connected. So I'm just going to get started, if that's okay. Allie, did you have anything else before I jump in? So this is a really juicy topic, and it's something that I work on a lot. Like I have a lot of like 5-year-old Corrine was like, I remember riding in the truck and being like asking my dad, like, why are we here? And him thinking this was utterly hilarious. And he had like no insightful perspective to offer me. But I remember thinking like, this all seems quite pointless. I have that distinct memory, and I wasn't in school yet. Thinking like, is this it? Like, really? And so it's been a lifelong endeavor for me to understand, like, where does, like, what is the point of all of this game? And I don't know. I'll be straight up. I don't know what any specific person or individual's life purpose is. And I have spent a very long time figuring this out for myself. I will save each of you the time, the trouble, the money, to reading all the books and consulting with all the experts to let you know that what I know for sure is that in general, each of us have a life purpose to create a relationship with ourselves. And what I mean is our life purpose is to get to know ourselves and create a friendship with ourselves so that we can know what our values and motivations are, and help you start to take those steps, to take actions, to start to create a life that are in line with those values that are unique just for you. So I'm just going to put that down as that's what I know for sure, is everything is related. And we need to start first with our relationship with ourselves, and then our relationship with other, and then we can, if that's important, talk about the relationship with spirit. Like everything is related, the earth, the rocks, the humans, the plants, the animals. And we have to start with ourselves and learn how to individuate and understand what's going on inside. Now, I know that that's not a very glamorous answer to what is my purpose in life, because we are often searching for the answer to this question because we want enlightenment on that one uncertain or unsatisfying part in our life, that's maybe our work, where we're asking the universe to tell us, like, what is that glamorous job that I'm supposed to have? Or asking the universe to tell us, why am I special? Or inviting into our lives that special relationship that resolves our fears and insecurities, or finding that family role that provides us with meaningful service in our life. And that's a really, like, I get it. That's why we want to know these things. And that's what drives us. Like, what is the game about? And asking, what is my purpose, has an assumption that it's an external thing, that my purpose is out there and I need to go find it. And I think that's a flawed assumption. I think asking that question also assumes that you're not already living the purpose in the life that you have. And again, I think that's a flawed assumption. I believe that asking the question, what is my purpose? That is the purpose. It's being ready to say, what life am I living now? And how is this life direction no longer serving me? Am I ready to find out who I am, what my top values are, my motivations, as Gavin said? Am I ready to find out what those are? And am I ready to start taking actions to create alignment? Because I'm a really special snowflake, and I need to figure out what works just for me. And I can't do that if I'm not diving deep inside to find out what I want. I can't go get what I want until I've done the depths searching of what do I want. And so asking this life, as like, what is my life purpose? It can be really scary, because it can also lead to these dark nights of the soul, moments where you have to confront that there is a misalignment in my life right now. And this real work needs to take place to recreate alignment between the life you want and the life that you're currently living, or the life that you're maybe accidentally living. I didn't mean to get here. I just am, and I'm not quite sure how I got here, but I'm here. And I need to now figure out how to realign that space. And those are big, like soul cracking open experiences, and they're so fun, but they're kind of ouchy in the process, and they're a lot of work, but it's totally worth it. I think I've had a couple dozen like those, like, dark night of the soul, like, what the fuck, how did I get here and how do I get out? That's happened a couple times, and I suspect this is relatable. So I'm just going to put that down.
Yep. We did some checking over the years, I think, about how are we going to link purpose and values, because everybody, like you said at the beginning, Karine, everybody's purpose is going to translate into something different. Like someone might decide at the end of the road, my purpose is helping others. My purpose is to fix this problem in the world. That's often how we think of it, fix this problem in the world. And those are lovely. It doesn't mean they're wrong at all. But there's like a step before. There's a step before that to help us check whether our purpose is that we've chosen is truly in line with sort of like true intention. And exactly what you said at the beginning, Karine, is what I keep coming back to check when I'm feeling like something's gone off the rails and I'm lost. It's number one, am I getting to know myself more deeply in this process of living that I'm in right now? And number two, am I taking actions that are informed by what I've learned about myself?
Truly. And along the way, like you said, we could find our passion. We could find something that's really motivating for us right now. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's our life purpose. But they're definitely connected.
Yes. Looks like we have a question, Corinne.
Miguel, what is a good way to find out what your values are? How do you narrow these things down and settle on, okay, these are my values? Yeah, that is a beautiful question because it is the starting point of everything at values-based living. And we have a quiz online on our website that is a good place to start. It's a beginner place, but it's a good place to start where it runs you through sort of a shopping list, if you will, of what are your top values. And you can start to identify a top 10, maybe a top 5. Maybe you're like, oh, I'm going to go with the top 20 right now. And that's a good place to start. And we have a workshop called Know Your Values. Oh, thanks, Ali. That was very well done. Putting that in the quiz in the chat. I'm sorry, my dog is going bananas. She has a value around protection, regardless if there's anything there or not to protect against, particularly men with hats and ladies with strollers. This is her jam. This is her passion. Also, we have a Know Your Values workshop that is walking you through not just what they are, but how you define what your values are, and starts to see how those already are showing up in your life so that you can plumb the experiences in your life to discover some values that you didn't know you had. So there's a couple of different ways, but those are 2 really great ways. And it looks like how are those in that workshop, how those values look when they're satisfied and how do they look when they're frustrated? Because the same value looks quite different in our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions. And that's a really great place to start, just to start to recognize how these things show up. Ellie, did you want to add anything?
I just want to say a sneak peek. One of the questions that we start with in the course that I just find so, it really gets my juices flowing is, what would you die? What would, what, am I saying that right? What would you, basically, what would you die if you didn't have? What, am I saying that right? Corinne, help me.
I don't know why that doesn't sound right when you say
I know,
it, but I think that is the question. Like, what would you die if you didn't have?
What would you die for? If you didn't have this thing, would you die spiritually, physically, emotionally, mentally? What, if something was missing, what would you slowly or quickly wilt and die around? And then, like you're saying, I think, was that Miguel? Like, there's so many values out there. It can be hard to narrow it down. But when it's like, not to be violent, but gun to your head, like, if we got rid of like the basic needs, I need to eat, I need to sleep, I need to have air to breathe. If we put those aside, what else? And then that forces us to really narrow it down. So starting there, like I think it might go from a list of 30 at first to a list of 20 to 10. But Corinne and I kind of say, if you can really force yourself to get it down to 3 to 5, then you know those values are super, super tippy top important.
Mm-hmm. And you may have different ones in different aspects of your life as well. And they just, and often they sound the same, but they actually have a different way of expressing themselves in those different life areas, like at work or in your home life. So lots of different ways to do it. Miguel, did you want to, you don't even have to come on camera, but if you want to ask a more specific, unique to you question, you can either pop it in the chat again or just come onto audio. That's cool too.
Please do. The other thing is, for everybody, our top values change. If we get to the very tippy top 3, they might change less. but it's okay for them to change. It's worthwhile to ask ourselves, what are my top values today?
Yeah.
And let it be different, and not let that mean, oh man, last week I thought they were this, and this week I'm thinking they're this, so I must not be doing this right. Let them change, because we change based on the environment that we're in, internally or externally.
And evolve.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can I share an example of me continuing to figure out my purpose that also lifts up a way to, I think, for all of us to get to know our values deeper and what our values are more deeply, because living in the world and having things happen to us help us get to know what our values are more deeply. So last week I was visiting my sister who has a kid, and she's 2, this little bean. And so I'm an auntie. I don't have kids, and I'm not interested in having kids. My partner and I have decided this. But she lives far, and so I like to spend really focused time with her when I can. So I did. Spent a week, took the flight, hung out with her nonstop. And when I got back, I was so sad to not be around her anymore, and really mourning the loss of her little presence in my day to day. And talking about motivation, Gavin, like, I was getting up way earlier than I usually do. Like, I was moving around way more than I normally do, like lifting her up. My arms were exhausted by the end of the day from holding her, and I was definitely spoiling her. Mom was giving me the eye a lot. And I was so willing to do that. Like, I wouldn't even call them sacrifices, because they felt like gifts, not sacrifices. And I was so motivated to pour my energy out for that week into this little bean. And then when I came home, I had this moment where I was hanging out with my partner, and I heard a noise, and I thought, oh, is that the baby waking up? Because that was what my ear was trained to for a week, was, oh, is she up? Do we need to go put her down again? And then I realized, no, it's the dog outside. And I was so crushed. It surprised me. It shocked me how disappointed I was. Number one, that it was like flashback. I miss Murph. I miss my niece. But also, my partner and I have decided not to have kids, and we're good with that. But it was also like grieving that we're never going to have that moment to hear the baby cry and go do this really meaningful thing, which is like tend to a tiny person's basic needs. Like, in terms of purpose, raising a child and adding an extra person to this world is, I think we can all agree, a very meaningful thing. And I was so confused in that moment because of my huge reaction. Like, we talk about ways to let us know that something is important to us. And we talk about head, heart, hands. Head being our thoughts, heart being our feelings, and hands being our behavior. And heart, my emotions were like so big. And it was really confusing because I started to jump to this conclusion, like, oh my gosh, am I supposed to have kids? Like, does this mean that, like, is my energy and sense of what I need to do in my life telling me, along with my emotions, that I want to have a kid in my life all the time? And I had to let myself sit with that, let that be a possibility, and then take it back to values. Because I should have kids, it's time to have kids, is a solution. It's an outcome, it's an external option. And so it's not the best place to start. And so backtracking to this question of what values were getting satisfied for me during that week with my niece. And then I was able to say, community was huge. Connection was getting so satisfied. Love was getting so satisfied. Belonging, all of these values that for me are really top, they're really tippy top. And peace, there was also like a peace and a non-judgmental acceptance that was happening. And it felt so good to be in an environment where those values were getting satisfied, period. And why I say period is that doesn't need to mean I need to replicate that environment. Just because my values got satisfied in that environment means it's informative. I've learned about myself. It doesn't mean I need to pull that external situation out and pop it into my life, because I still don't want to have kids. I still don't want to have all the other things that are satisfied and frustrated when a person has kids. But I do want a really consistent, meaningful community around me with connection and love. And there was even a sense of teamwork and belonging and all these things. If you see Corinne's face, she's writing all my values down. And so my work was to come back to values, identify what values are being satisfied. And now my work is, which I haven't gotten to yet, how can I get creative with these values and explore ways to satisfy my value of community and peace and non-judgment with the life that I have and actually want. Green, is there anything you want to say to summarize that blathering that I just did?
No, other than to say, like, I am never disappointed with the experience of taking like this, like sort of like a moment in time when we can like, this seems important and can we dive into this and start to peel it back. And I'm never disappointed by the richness of the information that we are pulling out, even if they are all they're doing is validating exactly the values we already knew we had. It creates a layer of depth and complexity of understanding, like a deeper understanding of why those things are important, where those things are important, and how they feel to me on the inside. It's not just a checkbox. It's a I don't even know, there must be a word to like this this ornate tapestry that you're continuing to contribute to that is so rich. And I love, Allie, just the way you are so introspective of the things that happen in your life. Like, you don't just experience life frivolously, you hold on to things and you go down deep. And I know we both do that, but I just really enjoy watching you do it and coaching yourself through it and being able to be really vulnerable and share, like, here's what I learned about myself. And that is a really private kind of conversation to be sharing out loud with other people. And we know how important this is. And it's important that we share this. We start demonstrating this in live action of like, this isn't a checkbox. Like, I don't just do the quiz and now I know my values and then I go and live a good life. Like, we have to continue to apply these in process, in the moment, sometimes in like post introspection moments. And I always feel like incredibly honored and just delighted when I get to see you do it. And it's super fun when I get to do it too.
Thanks, Corinne. Here's a reason why it's so important, I think, to give ourselves the time and permission to reflect on these wonderings, is because when we do it internally, when we imagine something happening and let ourselves flesh it out using values, the risk is pretty low. But when we don't do it internally, we tend to manifest it externally. Like, if I didn't reflect on, I wonder why I desperately suddenly want a child in my house, I might just decide it must mean I want to have a kid and then have a kid and then be like, oh, whoops, that isn't actually doing it for me. But I have a kid now, so there's no takesy backsies.
That's a lifetime commitment right there.
Right. And so if I let my imagination do a lot of the work and say, what if I did do that? What if I did have a kid? What values would be satisfied and frustrated? Then I could realize, oh, yeah, I really value freedom a lot. And
Yeah.
freedom takes a back seat when you have a kid for a long, long time. Am I willing to make that sacrifice? I don't think so. Okay, there must be a different way then for me to get more values satisfied, the community and the peace and the connection, while also letting my freedom value have some airtime.
And that's also a good way of understanding when we have kids, how moms can lose their identity. And we've talked about that a couple of times, how you can kind of lose your identity in that, because your values get shifted so hard in such a sudden and abrupt way. And it also explains why we also struggle. And I say moms in that postpartum time, but also parents across the lifetime of these kids. Like we can absolutely take on new pieces of information that shift our values in a big way. But we need to take a moment to grieve and mourn what we're taking on, but also notice what we're missing, what we gave up. And we don't do that often in a conscious way, like you just demonstrated. And then also in that empty nest space where parents are like, okay, well, that was such a meaningful piece of my life. Do I not have meaning anymore? Because I have no one to direct and drive and feed. And yeah, it's an important piece. And it comes to your question, Miguel. Questioning your own, sounds like questioning your own values is a good check-in to make sure they haven't shifted. Period. Yep, absolutely. And it's not just like that we grow and we evolve and we shift, but our life experiences can force a big shift where we're prioritized. Maybe we don't lose those values or they don't change, but we have a life experience that's right in front of us that is so hard focused on some of these values or motivations that some of them that are still there and important either are so dearly malnourished or lacking attention. But the thing is, we didn't lose them. They're still there. They're just not getting satisfied. And we need to have a vocabulary and a structure, a model to be able to say, where did those go? I need to take care of those a little bit. And I need to, in this evolved experience that I'm having, I need to figure out a new way, either to accept that those are not going to be satisfied, or to say, I need to carve out pieces of time to satisfy those. And also to acknowledge that new values have come up in a way that you'd never maybe expected, or redefining the way that freedom looks. Maybe freedom is still going to be activated in a different way.
I just want to say, when you're talking, Miguel, about like checking in on your values, man, this has taken practice for me, because I felt like if I know my top values, I did that. Now what else? There's like this sense of like, because novelty is such a high value for me, I have this sense of like, what's the next thing to learn that will move me to the next level? But I have needed to like take a minute to remember that my values are always going to be relevant. So I can read the next self-help book if I want to, listen to the next podcast, like work with the next therapist or coach, but take my values with me, because checking in on them will always bring a new perspective to the old like bowl of values that are just staying with me and maybe changing here and there. I'm going to have fresh eyes each time a new example happens. I'm going to put in the chat too something that Kareen and I created for us, because we need reminders to do that, to check in on our values. We created a day planner that has little prompts every week to help us like track our values and track the examples, to help us realize each week which values are top of mind and which ones are causing us trouble, like which ones, like, because values can get sneaky and they can sort of run the show without us, without our permission. We call those shadow values at VBL because they're in shadow. They're literally like unknown to us, but they burble up and take the reins, like I said, without our permission. And some values can play more of a goal role. Like, I want to lean in more to this value, so I'm going to pay attention to it more. And so there's so many different ways we can play with values, and this day planner is a good way of doing it. So it's obviously April right now, so it's on super sale, because who gets a day planner in April? But if you want a way to just track values, and like, you can track your day-to-day to-dos in here too, but it can be really helpful to, as a way to do those, to create your top values and then do the check-ins on a regular basis in one place. So let's see, what else? Does anybody have any questions about what we've been talking about, or that, you know, things that are just totally unrelated to the purpose topic that we're describing? But they have to do with some sort of conflict, whether it's internal conflict or external conflict. Examples can really help show how, number one, values are everywhere, and number two, getting to know them helps us with the situation that we're in. Anybody have anything?
Yeah, but did you have any more questions about the motivation connection to purpose? You started off with that and you said, yeah, well, we'll get to that. How do we do?
It's just something I'm keeping my eye open for all of the time here, because I think I've got lots of those shadow values things installed by my parents that, you know, here's what I should want, and here's what I should do, and here's how I should spend my life. And every time I do something that, oh, that gives me joy, I want to do that. And then my brain just kind of goes, well, should you? So I have a clear feeling that I'm finding something closer to my purpose or closer to my values, but my motivation is being questioned or sapped by all of that, the questioning, the self-doubt, the shoulds that are running through my brain. So just any hints and tips on how to work through that.
Those saboteurs that are, yeah, installed by well-meaning parents or just society in general, saying like, are you sure that that's what you should do? If it's not directly productive or making money, is that something you should be wasting your time on? And I think that there's an interesting evolving conversation right now that sounds a bit anti-capitalist, but it's really just like, where are we giving ourselves permission and delightful, not begrudging permission, but delighted permission to be in joy, to live life for the sake of life, and have fun. I don't know where in our narrative, our collective societal narrative, that got edited out. You know, we don't need to go back to like Calvinistic or like these sort of Puritan perspectives, but like they're there, and we get to make new decisions because we've never had freedoms like we have now in our society to make judgments for ourselves, to make decisions. And now we need to learn how to, not just that we can do it, we need to learn how to do it in a really healthy way, with full permission and delight. I get it. I think you're on a very interesting journey to subvert a lot of what our predecessors, our parents, or previous generations would say is ridiculous frivolity. But you know what? They also, let's just notice that those baby boomers, for example, they knew how to have a good time too. They maybe had some like different motivators and drivers, but like the 70s were a pretty big party. And for them to say like that's those are frivolous kind of things, I'm like, I think I don't think the things that I know that you are looking for, Gavin, because we've been talking for a really long time, are not frivolous and ridiculous. They're like joyful and meaningful and beautiful. And that we get stuck with like, should I? And when you say it out loud, it actually becomes quite comical. You're like, why would I even question that? But it's still in there.
I'm seeing a question from Leah saying, she says, I like the concept of how to recognize your values and what they look like when they aren't showing up. Can you give some examples? Yeah, I can think of a couple of examples. Corrine, what comes to you? Me? Okay. Yeah, so you're talking about when a value isn't showing up in your life. And there's a couple ways I could interpret that, Leah. So let me know if there's like more detail you want to share to really get at a specific situation that you're thinking of. But in general, when there's a value that we have that isn't being satisfied, our response to that can be to be dissatisfied in some way, right? So we are being very responsible. We have a lot of stuff we need to do. We're being very productive. Our values of productivity and accomplishment and competence maybe are really being satisfied because we're killing it at work and our house looks great. However, maybe we are maybe we're not getting fun and pleasure satisfied. And so even though our life looks awesome, we're maybe miserable. Maybe we feel like crap. That's the heart breadcrumb. Or maybe our actions are confusing us and they're doing things that we're thinking to ourselves, I have a great life. What the hell's going on? Because our actions are, maybe we get home and conceptually we know we like to go hang out with our friends or go hiking, but we're not doing that. We just come home and watch TV, scroll on Instagram for hours and hours. And after we've done doing those things, we feel worse. There's something going on there where our values are out of balance. And this is an imaginary case, right? There could be other values based on the specific person. But if, for example, our values of accomplishment and productivity are running the show and they're getting sort of like over satisfied, then other values are going to get under satisfied. In this case, maybe pleasure and fun. And so what happens is when a value is not getting satisfied, especially over a long period of time, it tries to force itself to get satisfied. So it burbles up in these ways that we didn't decide should be there. And so they can happen. They are attempting to be satisfied, which is supposed to be helpful for us. We're meant to get as many of our values satisfied as we can, but they're doing it in a way that's actually not that helpful to us. So artificially trying to have fun by watching someone else, like in a movie, have this great adventure. And it feels kind of good in the moment, but if we had our own adventure, if we had our own like interactions with like socializing and stuff like that, there would be a maybe more meaningful satisfaction of that value of fun. I do want to say that I don't think watching TV and scrolling on Instagram are bad things. But after you've done doing the thing, do you feel worse? Do you feel better or do you feel worse? Because if you feel worse, then there might be like there's something going on there. Because if we're trying to satisfy our value of fun and we feel worse after we've done the fun thing, we need to readjust. So an example of a value, what happens when it doesn't show up? That one, the example that comes to mind is that balance of that we're constantly, I think, as adults playing between responsibility and enjoyment. Responsibility is necessary and we need to, do certain things to be able to feed ourselves and keep a roof over our heads and that sort of thing. And responsibility can also be intrinsically and, valuable and enjoyable. But if we go too far, which we can do in Western society, we can forget that fun is nourishing. Pleasure is nourishing. Joy, like you're talking about, Karine, is nourishing in itself. And if we think that we're going to have a full life without those things, without any little nugget of those things, which is often what we're told, depending on the generation that we're from and the society that we live in, it can be so confusing. Because something's missing and we don't have the narrative and the script to tell us what's missing. And if we do, it's twisted. It's in a commercial that says, all you need is a Sea-Doo, and then you will be able to have fun and pleasure in your life and it will be solved. But actually, no, that's playing on our tendency to squish that value and telling us that all we have to do to solve it is, often buy that thing. But instead, what we can do is go inward. What Karine was saying about looking externally can be problematic. Instead, go inward and check with ourselves and ask ourselves, how important is fun to me? And what do I know already about what's fun? How have I had that value satisfied for me in the past? And what might be true for me now? And then experiment and give ourselves little, life experiments to see, if I try this version of fun or that version of fun, is it doing it for me? Who knows? Maybe it is a Sea-Doo. Or maybe it's something else that might not be fun for anyone else. I won't get down in this tangent, but I'll just say my idea of fun tends to be very different than many other people's idea of fun. Like carving out 3 hours to read a book it's just like this beautiful, enjoyable, sinful thing for me to do that other people would be very confused and roll their eyes at. But it doesn't matter what they think, because I've gone internally to answer this question for myself. And so that's my example. Karine?
I think those are fantastic examples. Leah, do you want to add anything like a specific question or more detailed question about what you're looking for there? Or did that kind of answer your question? I added in the chat the second question that you had around tools to uncover the values that we accidentally or purposely adopted from past generations that aren't serving. And it could be even societal expectations. We have a workshop called Values Reset that is designed to expose those ones that we were given rather than the ones that are actually intrinsically inside of us, and to treat those with care and kindness, and be able to just explore where they came from, why they're there, do they serve us, and invite them to be wished well as they kindly bugger off because they are not mine. I didn't want those. And they're actually distracting me from my true values. And now I'm purposely wishing them to go away.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite courses that we offer, actually. So if you are interested, if anyone on the line is interested, just send us a note, because we don't have one currently scheduled live. And we're working on putting it online so folks can take it any time. But if you really want to take it, let us know and we'll add you to a wait list.
Yeah, it's a gooder. I'm glad that was hitting what you're looking for. Thanks for your questions, Leah.
So we just have a couple of minutes left. Any other thoughts that anybody has that they want to throw out there before we move into a close? Okay, I just want to say about this Values Reset course, I expect we have a podcast, and I expect we will
Mm.
be covering values reset topics in that podcast because it is everywhere. I found after wrapping my head around that content, I would walk around in the world and constantly be confronted with values that I thought were mine that are not mine, or at least not to the extent that I thought. And the responsibility is a big one, I think, because there's this sense, like I find when I'm alone, even, I will have this beautiful, enjoyable, pleasurable moment. Like I'll have gone for a hike, say, and I'll come back and I'll sit down and I'll have this like, I think I used this example in the last circle that we have. So Gavin, you'll remember, but sitting down and just having this moment of like pure joy, like, and peace, just sitting after having done an enjoyable thing. And then something will pop into my head that says, all right, Allie, what should you be doing now? Like, don't relax for too long. Don't let yourself be in this enjoyable, peaceful moment for too long, because you should probably be doing something. It, as a responsible adult, even though I'm the only one who knows, there's like this invisible oversight that's looking in, ensuring that a level of being a responsible person is always present. And so I'll wander around the house looking for something to do, or clean this thing, or like get this thing done around work. And there's always something. I can always get this responsibility value satisfied to a degree because there's always more to do. But sometimes I let it squish other values that deserve a bit more airtime. And that responsibility value is not actually in my nature, I don't think, to prioritize as highly as it is. And so it's been messaged to me, maybe from my parents, sprinkled in a little bit from living in Western society, sprinkled in a little bit from living in a capitalist society that's telling me producing is really important. And so when responsibility gets to a point where I'm dissatisfied with how it's showing up, I need to take a look at it and ask myself, whose idea is this? Because I don't think it's mine, because I'm fulfilling it and I don't like it. I'm doing a thing that I don't like that I'm doing. I'm doing it and I feel like crap, or my thoughts are not what I would like them to be. They're giving me a clue that something's up. And so then I can do the work of giving myself permission to put that aspect of responsibility over there. That one's not mine. I'm going to practice, not just once. It's not a one-time decision to move it over there and then it's gone forever, but it's a continual, as more examples come up. Oh, right, you're not mine. Put you over there. And then do my best to act based on the level of not abandoning responsibility as a value, but only taking on the parts that do align with me and not the rest of the culture that I'm living in. It's a continual check-in, that's for sure. I really like what was said about continually checking in about the values, because yeah, it's definitely not a one and done. Okay. Any final thoughts, comments before we close? I'll just say that last link, if you want to get to know, like if you want to make sure you're flagged for the next one and you're not already subscribed, feel free to go on the website and for the link that we showed above, and then you can subscribe. This Zoom Q&A will be on YouTube. So if you want to check back and watch it again or send it to a friend, you can do it that way. And yeah, every month we've got a free Zoom Q&A and a couple of free podcast episodes that come out. We also have a more content on our podcast that's available if you go behind the paywall. I think you can spend like $3 to $15 or something a month, and then you get access to more content and more vulnerable content. Like if you want to watch somebody be coached in real time, you can do that. It's a cool opportunity that is really vulnerable, and so we like to make sure that it's more of a protected, safe space for that. And we do monthly circles, as well as the workshops being available. So as you can tell, we love to embed values in so many little parts of our lives and make it available for people in many different ways too. So take a look around and see which resonates for you. And if you're not sure, just send us a note. Whether you like, an email actually works really well. If you're not sure, and we'll help kind of walk through what might be most appropriate for what you're working on in your life right now. Corinne, anything you want to say before we close?
No, I think this has been a lovely conversation that evolved from like, well, what is our purpose, and sort of landing that our purpose is about creating a relationship with ourselves and finding that way to individuate so that we can have relationships in a whole way with others and the world around us. And this has just been a lovely call with folks popping in with questions and talking about and thinking through ways that we can understand our values, which helps us understand ourselves a little bit better, a little bit deeper, that result in really good outcomes.
Yay. Thanks everybody for coming. Appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you, Leah. And hope to see you next month. Please welcome. You're welcome to keep coming back.
Take care.